Lila, don't play with your food. Nathan glared, his eyes narrowing at our 10-year-old daughter. I tensed, anticipating another evening filled with his rage. As I opened my mouth to defend Lila, she suddenly pushed her plate away. The food spilled onto the spotless tablecloth. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean to." Nathan slammed his fist on the table, causing us both to flinch. "How often have I told you we don't waste food in this house?" My heart raced as his face turned red, the vein on his forehead pulsing. I recognized that look all too well, the precursor to his fury. Before I could step in, Lila's small hand reached out and knocked over Nathan's cherished baseball, signed by Babe Ruth himself. It rolled off the table and hit the floor with a sickening thud. Time got still as Nathan's eyes widened in disbelief. He turned his glare toward Lila, who shrank back in her chair. "You little brat, do you have any idea how much that's worth?" As he stood up, I placed a trembling hand on his arm. "Nathan, please, it was unintentional." He shrugged me off, his focus still on our daughter. "This behavior is unacceptable, Lila. You need to learn some respect." Lila's lips quivered and tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm really sorry." I was terrified when I saw Nathan reaching for his belt and knew what would happen next. It was a routine I'd witnessed countless times, his anger escalating to physical punishment disguised as discipline. But this time, something changed in Lila's eyes. She stopped crying and straightened her back, her eye glaring at Nathan's. "No, Daddy, I won't let you hurt Mommy anymore." I held my breath as Lila's words rang in the air, revealing the harsh truth I'd been avoiding for so many years. Nathan was stunned, his face turning red due to anger. "What did you dare to say?" Lila looked at me, her expression a mix of determination and sadness. "Mom, I see the way he treats you. The shouting, the pushing, the bruises you try to hide. It's not right." My carefully crafted facade crumbled as tears streamed down my face. All the times I'd made justifications, all the falsehoods I'd convinced myself and others of, they crumbled in that one gut-wrenching moment. Nathan's complexion paled as he stared at us, his mouth wide open. For once, he was wordless, stripped of his dominance and power. In that deep silence, I realized that my courageous daughter had given me the courage I'd been lacking all these years, the courage to confront the truth, to shield her, and to break free from the cycle of mistreatment that had become my existence. As I embraced Lila tightly, I knew our lives would never be the same. But for the first time in ages, I sensed a spark of optimism, a hope for a future liberated from fear, a future where love conquered violence. The shattered remnants of Nathan's cherished baseball lay strewn on the ground, a fitting symbol for the illusion that had just been shattered. In that instant, I pledged to never allow anyone to dominate or belittle me again. The aftermath of that pivotal dinner was like an explosion in our household. The silence that ensued after Lila's revelation was overwhelming, punctuated only by the occasional noise as Nathan paced back and forth, his hands running through his unkempt hair. "How could you?" he seethed, glaring at Lila with fury in his eyes. "How could you disrespect me like this under my roof?" Lila flinched but stood her ground. "I'm sorry, Dad, but I won't let you harm Mom anymore." Nathan spun around to face me, his expression twisted with fury. "Is this true, Janelle? Have you been poisoning her mind with lies about me?" I swallowed hard, feeling my heart racing in my chest. This was the moment I had feared for so long, the showdown that could either liberate me or embed me further in his web of manipulation. "No, Nathan," I replied, my voice remarkably steady. "Lila's speaking the truth. I can't hide it any longer." His eyes narrowed, and he advanced towards me, his fists clenched tightly. "Hide it? You think this is some sort of game?" Before he could come any closer, Lila stepped between us, her slight frame trembling, but her eyes ablaze with determination. "Don't you lay a hand on her." Nathan recoiled as if struck, his expression a mixture of disbelief and fury. "How dare you speak to me like that, you ungrateful child? You can't call her that," I snapped, surprising even myself with the intensity of my words. Nathan's head whipped towards me, and for a fleeting moment, I braced myself for a potential blow. But there was something in my defiance that seemed to halt him. "This is all your doing, Janelle," he hissed. "You've poisoned my daughter against her own father." I shook my head, a strange sense of calmness washing over me. "No, Nathan. I've simply endured your outbursts and mistreatment for far too long. Lila's merely the one courageous enough to acknowledge the reality." His face flushed with anger, and he opened his mouth to oppose, but I raised my hand, silencing him. "I'm finished, Nathan. I refuse to continue living in fear, tiptoeing around you, making lousy excuses for your actions. It ends now." A glimmer of uncertainty flickered across his features, and for the first time, I detected a crack in his facade of dominance. "You can't be serious," he scoffed, though his words lacked their usual conviction. "I've never been more serious," I declared, my voice resolute. "This stops tonight." Nathan's gaze darted between Lila and me, and I could sense the realization dawning upon him. The years of manipulation and psychological warfare were unraveling before his very eyes. "You'll regret this," he spat, his words dripping with malice. "You'll have nothing left. I'll ensure it." I straightened my posture, buoyed by a newfound fortitude I hadn't felt in ages. "Your money means nothing to me, Nathan. All I desire is to break free from you and your manipulation." His eyes widened, and for a moment, I braced myself for a potential outburst. Yet, Lila's steadfast presence seemed to give him pause, and he merely shook his head in disbelief. "Fine," he growled. "Leave then. Let's see how you fare without me." With those words, he pivoted on his heel and stormed out of the room, leaving Lila and me amidst our shattered lives. As I drew my daughter into a tight embrace, tears of relief and determination cascaded down my cheeks. The facade had crumbled, and there was no turning back. It was time to break free, regardless of the cost. In the days following my confrontation with Nathan, our home was steeped in tension. He would often go out without explanation, returning late at night reeking of alcohol. Lila and I treaded cautiously around him, uncertain when his dormant fury might erupt. Amidst this turmoil, I reached out to an old friend, Mariah. Our connection had waned since my marriage to Nathan, his controlling nature gradually isolating me from my support network. Yet, when I got the courage to confide in Mariah about the reality of my marriage, she became a steadfast pillar of support. "Janelle, you need to escape," she urged, her voice laden with concern over the video call. "What he's subjecting you to is abuse and manipulation." I nodded, my vision blurred by tears. "I understand, but it's not as simple as just leaving. He's threatened to take everything from me, even Lila." Mariah's gaze turned steely with determination. "He'll have to go through me first. Janelle, you and Lila deserve a life far better than this." Her unwavering support was like a beacon of hope, granting me the courage to embark on the initial steps toward freedom. With Mariah's guidance, I cautiously recorded every instance of Nathan's abuse, documenting his outbursts, threats, and the rare but terrifying instances of physical violence. I began stashing away whatever funds I could, secretly establishing a bank account in anticipation of our eventual escape. Meanwhile, Lila and I subtly undermined Nathan's control in subtle ways. We'd accidentally leave doors unlocked, misplace his belongings, and question his decisions in front of others. It was a risky game, but one that gradually eroded his perceived authority. "What's gotten into you two?" He would seethe, his face flushed with anger. "Are you trying to make a fool out of me?" "Of course not, darling," I would respond, feigning innocence. "We just have our moments of forgetfulness." Lila would nod earnestly, her innocent eyes a stark contrast to Nathan's boiling rage. He'd simmer with frustration, his jaw clenched, but he could never quite catch us in blatant acts of defiance. As the weeks passed, the tension in our home grew thicker, like a storm brewing on the horizon. Nathan became increasingly volatile, his temper flaring at the slightest provocation. It was during one of these explosive moments that the final impetus for our escape plan surfaced. "You ungrateful brats!" Nathan thundered, slamming his fist onto the table with enough force to make the dishes clatter. "After all I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" Lila recoiled, but I held her gaze steady, refusing to back down. "What exactly have you done for us, Nathan?" I inquired, my voice eerily calm. "Besides making our lives a constant nightmare?" His eyes widened in disbelief, and for a fleeting moment, I braced myself for a potential attack. Yet Lila's hand found mine, grounding me, and I felt a surge of resilience. "You think your tantrums still intimidate us?" I pressed on, my confidence mounting. "Those days are over. We're not afraid of you anymore." Nathan's face flushed an alarming shade of crimson. He began to open his mouth, undoubtedly preparing another barrage of insults, but this time I didn't allow him the satisfaction. "Save your breath," I interjected, rising from the table. "We're leaving, Nathan. Tonight." His eyes narrowed, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. "You'll never make it without me. I'll track you down, and when I do—" I didn't permit him to finish. With Lila's hand securely in mine, I turned on my heel and strode away, leaving him fuming in impotent fury behind us. As we gathered our modest belongings, a newfound sense of resolve surged within me. The storm had gathered, and now it was time to brave it, regardless of the obstacles in our path. In the days following our declaration to depart, Nathan's behavior grew increasingly volatile and menacing. It was as if he sensed his grip slipping, driving him to a crazy state of desperation. "Do you honestly believe you can simply walk away from me?" he snarled one evening, cornering me in the kitchen while Lila was at school. "After everything I've provided for you?" I held my ground, refusing to cower. "You've provided us with nothing but suffering, Nathan. We deserve better." His eyes narrowed, and he advanced closer, invading my personal space. "Better? How ungrateful. Without me, you'd be nothing." The stale stench of alcohol on his breath turned my stomach, but I stood firm, my heart pounding in my chest. "That's where you're mistaken," I retorted, my voice unwavering despite the fear coursing through me. "Without you, we'll finally attain freedom." A muscle twitched in his jaw, and for an instant, I braced myself for a potential strike. Then, a malicious grin spread across his features, sending a shiver down my spine. "Freedom?" he scoffed. "You'll never be rid of me, Janelle. I possess you, and I control that little brat of a daughter you've turned against me." My fists clenched at my sides, and I fought the urge to retaliate. "You don't own us, Nathan," I asserted, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "We are not your possessions." His sneer morphed into a vicious snarl, and he leaned in closer, his breath reeking of alcohol against my face. "We'll see about that." Before I could react, he seized my arm in a merciless grip, his fingers digging into my flesh. I cried out in agony, attempting to wrench myself free, but his grasp remained unyielding. "Let go," I demanded, my voice shaking with fear, yet it only seemed to stoke his fury. "Or what?" he jeered, his eyes flashing with cruelty. "You'll scurry away like a frightened mouse? You're going nowhere, Janelle, not until I permit it." Panic tightened its grip on my chest as I struggled against his overpowering hold, but it was futile. He was relentless, fueled by years of pent-up resentment and an insatiable thirst for dominance. Just as despair threatened to consume me entirely, a small voice cut through the tension. "Daddy, stop! You're hurting her." We both froze as Lila entered the kitchen, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and resolve. Nathan's grip on my arm slackened slightly, but he didn't release me. "Stay out of this, Lila," he growled. "This is between your mother and me." But Lila stood her ground. "No, Daddy, it's not just about you anymore. We're leaving, and you can't stop us." Nathan's face twisted with fury, and he shoved me aside, redirecting his anger towards our daughter. "You insolent child, do you think you can speak to me like that?" Before he could advance toward her, I positioned myself between them, my heart pounding with a blend of fear and determination. "Don't you dare touch her," I warned, my voice steady and resolute. Nathan's eyes widened in disbelief, momentarily caught off guard by my defiance. "Or what?" he sneered, though a hint of uncertainty flickered in his gaze. I straightened my posture, drawing strength from Lila's unwavering presence behind me. "Or you'll face the consequences," I declared, my words infused with a newfound sense of authority. "This ends now, Nathan. We're leaving and you can't prevent it." His gaze narrowed, his fists clenching at his sides as he trembled with suppressed rage. For a moment, I feared he might lash out in a fit of blind fury, but then a shift occurred in his expression, a dawning realization that his control was slipping away. With a final growl of frustration, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Lila and me standing united, our bond stronger than ever. As I enveloped my daughter in a tight embrace, I knew that the tide had turned. Nathan's desperation had pushed us to our breaking point, and now there was no turning back. The time for our escape had arrived. In the aftermath of Nathan's explosive outburst, Lila and I remained huddled together, our hearts still racing from the confrontation. It served as a stark reminder that our plan to escape had to progress, despite the risks. As I attempted to comfort my trembling daughter, a sudden knock at the door sent a jolt of fear through me. My mind raced, fearing it was Nathan who returned to unleash his fury once more. As I cautiously peered through the peephole, I was met with an unexpected sight. Nathan's business partner, Michael, shifting nervously on the doorstep. "Janelle," he said in a hushed tone when I cracked the door open, "I need to talk to you. It's urgent." I hesitated, stealing a glance back at Lila, who offered a subtle nod of encouragement. With trembling hands, I welcomed Michael inside, my mind racing with possibilities. Once the door was securely shut, Michael wasted no time. "Janelle, I'm aware of what's been happening," he began, his voice tinged with both remorse and determination. "The way Nathan treats you, the atmosphere of fear he cultivates, it's unacceptable." My heart skipped a beat as I absorbed his words. Had our struggles been evident to outsiders all this time? Sensing my apprehension, Michael pressed on. "I'm not the only one who's noticed, Janelle. There are others at the firm who've witnessed Nathan's behavior, both at home and in the workplace." A flicker of hope ignited within me, though it was tempered by a sense of apprehension. If Nathan's colleagues were aware of his true character, it could either spell our liberation or our downfall. "What do you mean?" I inquired, my voice barely above a whisper. Michael's resolve hardened as he continued. "We've been gathering evidence of his misconduct, documenting his abusive practices and misuse of authority. It's only a matter of time before the truth emerges, and he faces the consequences." I stole a glance at Lila, silently seeking her approval, and she gave a subtle nod. Turning back to Michael, I steadied my nerves. "And what role do we play in this?" I asked, my tone more assertive now. Michael's expression softened, a glimmer of sympathy in his eyes. "Janelle, we know what you've endured, and we want to offer our help. My breath caught in my throat as the weight of his offer settled over me. Help. A lifeline we hadn't dared to hope for. How? I asked, my voice trembling with a blend of hope and apprehension. Michael reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved a small flash drive. This contains evidence of Nathan's transgressions, both personal and professional, enough to ensure he can never harm you again. He held out the drive towards me, his gaze steady. Take it, Janelle. Use it to safeguard yourself and your daughter, and remember that you have allies, even in the shadows. My hand shook as I accepted the drive, its weight grounding me in that surreal moment. Allies. A notion so unfamiliar yet desperately sought after. Thank you, I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say. Michael shook his head, a somber smile tugging at his lips. Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll use it to break free from him once and for all. I nodded, a fierce determination flooding through me. I promise. As Michael prepared to depart, he hesitated, his hand pausing on the doorknob. One more thing, Janelle. Be cautious. Nathan is a dangerous man, and he'll go to great lengths to maintain his dominance. His warning sent a shiver down my spine, but I refused to let fear dictate my actions any longer. We'll be prepared, I declared, my voice laced with resolve. With a solemn nod, Michael slipped out into the night, leaving Lila and me to contemplate our newfound allies and the significance of the evidence we now possessed. As I clutched the flash drive tightly, I knew our escape plan had taken on a renewed urgency. The storm clouds were gathering, but this time we wouldn't be facing them alone. The weight of Michael's evidence, coupled with the assurance of allies working behind the scenes, propelled us into action. Lila and I understood that we had to act swiftly before Nathan caught wind of the brewing tempest. In the days that followed, we toiled tirelessly, gathering our scant possessions and stockpiling essentials for our journey. Mariah remained steadfast in her support, offering us a sanctuary to flee to when the time came. Are you certain about this, Janelle? She inquired one evening, her voice hushed through the video call. Once you depart, there's no turning back. I glanced at Lila, who was diligently packing her backpack with determination in her eyes. Our gazes met, and I saw a resolve beyond her years. I'm certain, I affirmed, turning back to Mariah with a firm nod. We cannot endure this any longer. It's time to break free, whatever the cost. Mariah's expression softened, a mixture of pride and concern evident on her face. Very well. Just give the word, and I'll be there to whisk you away. With our plans in motion, the tension in our household became almost tangible. Nathan seemed to perceive the shift in the atmosphere, his gaze narrowing with suspicion whenever he caught Lila and me exchanging whispers. What are you two plotting? He would demand, his voice tinged with barely concealed anger. We would share a knowing glance before turning back to him with feigned innocence. Just discussing school, dear, we would reply, knowing full well the weight of our unspoken preparations. His jaw would clench and his nostrils would flare, but he could never quite catch us in our arrangements. Finally, the night of our liberation arrived. Nathan had stormed off after yet another heated argument, leaving us a narrow window of opportunity to slip away unnoticed. Are you prepared? I asked Lila, my heart pounding as we gathered our modest possessions. She nodded, her young face a mixture of determination and vulnerability that both broke and uplifted my spirit. I'm ready, Mom. With trembling fingers, I dialed Mariah's number, the burner phone feeling like a lifeline in my grasp. It's time, I whispered when she answered, my voice betraying a blend of apprehension and exhilaration. I'll be there, Mariah replied, her tone steady and comforting. Stay resolute, Janelle. Relief is on its way. As we awaited Mariah's arrival, Every creak and rustle in the old house seemed amplified, setting my nerves on edge. What if Nathan returned unexpectedly? What if he intercepted us before we could flee? But then, the familiar sight of Mariah's car pulling up outside brought a wave of relief, and Lila's hand found mine, grounding me in the present moment. "Let's go, Mom," she urged, her voice quivering but her eyes alight with determination. With a deep breath, I hoisted our meager belongings and followed my daughter into the night, leaving behind the confines of our former existence. As we slipped into Mariah's awaiting vehicle, I couldn't resist stealing a final glance at the house. The curtains in Nathan's study fluttered, and for a fleeting instant, I thought I glimpsed his silhouette in the window, observing our departure. A chill ran down my spine, but I refused to succumb to fear. Not this time. "Drive," I commanded, my voice steady and resolute. Mariah needed no further prompting. With a determined nod, she pulled away from the curb, propelling us into the night and toward an uncertain but liberating future. It was a future that we would carve out for ourselves, free from Nathan's oppressive grip. As the distance grew between us and our former prison, I felt a burden lift from my shoulders, replaced by a surge of empowerment and newfound resolve. We were free, and no amount of Nathan's fury could ever chain us again. In the weeks following our audacious escape, Lila and I remained on edge, half expecting Nathan to materialize and drag us back into his cycle of control and torment. However, as time passed and we settled into our new life with Mariah's unwavering support, our constant apprehension gradually gave way to a tentative optimism. It was during this transitional period that the first fissures in Nathan's meticulously crafted facade began to emerge. Rumors of his abusive behavior and corrupt business dealings began to circulate, fueled by the anonymous dissemination of evidence from former colleagues. Initially dismissed as mere gossip by Nathan's legal team and public relations machinery, the whispers gained momentum as more incriminating information came to light, culminating in a relentless barrage of media scrutiny. "Have you seen the headlines?" Mariah inquired one morning, her voice tinged with a mix of triumph and concern as she handed me a newspaper. My heart skipped a beat as I absorbed the bold print splashed across the front page. Local businessman accused of abuse and corporate misconduct. Accompanying the article was a grainy photograph capturing Nathan amidst a throng of reporters, his countenance contorted in defiance. The caption ominously declared, "Moore denies allegations, vows legal retaliation." The surge of conflicting emotions washed over me, relief that the truth was finally emerging, yet tempered by the lingering fear of Nathan's inevitable retaliation. "He won't let this go, will he?" I murmured, tracing the lines of his enraged expression with trembling fingers. Mariah's response was grim. "Probably not. But we're prepared, Janelle. He can't harm you anymore." Her words served as a solemn reminder of the allies who had risked everything to expose Nathan's misdeeds and furnish us with the evidence we needed for protection. In the ensuing days, the media frenzy surrounding Nathan's scandals reached a fever pitch. Journalists besieged his office and residence, clamoring for answers as he struggled to maintain his disintegrating facade of control. "No comment," he'd growl, pushing through the throng of reporters, his face a mask of fury. Yet the leaks persisted, each revelation more damning than the last, exposing financial improprieties, allegations of misconduct, and whispers of criminal behavior. It felt like a floodgate had burst open, washing away Nathan's carefully crafted image with the relentless surge of truth. Lila and I observed from the safety of our sanctuary, a bittersweet sense of justice enveloping us as we witnessed Nathan's downfall. "He deserves it, doesn't he, Mom?" Lila pondered one evening, captivated by yet another exposé on the news. I hesitated, torn between a desire for justice and lingering apprehension of Nathan's reach. I'm not sure, honey, I admitted, drawing her close. But what matters is that he can't harm us anymore. We're safe, and that's what counts. Lila nodded thoughtfully, a small smile playing on her lips. I'm glad he's facing consequences, she declared, her voice imbued with a strength beyond her years. After everything he put us through, it's only fair. As I gazed into her resilient eyes, I swelled with pride. My daughter, once vulnerable to Nathan's rage, had emerged as a formidable force, her spirit unbroken by our trials. Together, we would confront whatever the future held, empowered, united, and forever liberated from Nathan's tyranny. As Nathan's empire crumbled and his reputation disintegrated, a sense of vindication washed over me. Not for personal retribution, but for the countless others who had suffered at his hands. The exposure of his atrocities marked the dawn of accountability, each revelation a step towards justice. The monster had been unmasked, and now he would confront the consequences of his actions, facing the repercussions with every ounce of the misery he had inflicted upon others. As the dust settled on Nathan's dramatic downfall, Lila and I stood at a crossroads, contemplating the daunting task of rebuilding our lives from the rubble of our past existence. Where do we go from here, Mom? Lila's question hung in the air, the weight of uncertainty heavy in her voice. I took a moment to consider her words, the journey we had embarked upon together, and the newfound freedom that lay before us. Anywhere we want, sweetheart, I responded, reaching out to gently brush a strand of hair from her face. The world is ours now. A small, tentative smile graced Lila's lips, a flicker of hope dancing in her eyes. I like the sound of that, she whispered, her voice infused with a newfound sense of possibility. In the weeks that followed, Lila and I made the difficult decision to part ways with Mariah, grateful for her support, but eager to chart our course. With the assistance of the evidence provided by Nathan's former associates, I secured a modest settlement from his rapidly disintegrating empire, a small token of recompense for the years of torment we had endured. Armed with our meager possessions and a renewed sense of determination, Lila and I embarked on a journey to start anew in a different town, leaving the specter of Nathan's abuse firmly behind us. As we settled into our humble apartment, unpacking the few belongings we had managed to salvage, I couldn't help but marvel at the resilience and strength that had carried us through the darkest of times. Are you happy, Mom? Lila's voice broke through the quiet as we sat together in our new home, the scent of fresh beginnings lingering in the air. I looked around at our modest surroundings, the warmth of our shared space enveloping us like a comforting embrace. In that moment, surrounded by the echoes of our past and the promise of our future, I felt a profound sense of contentment wash over me. Happier than I've been in a long time, I replied, enfolding Lila in a tight hug. Lila's warmth against me was a soothing balm to my soul. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. In the months that followed, Nathan's name gradually faded from the headlines, his once powerful empire crumbling into obscurity. Yet, the scars of his abuse remained, etched into our hearts and minds, a reminder of the battles we had fought and the strength we had discovered within ourselves. While his presence still lingered in the corners of our thoughts, we refused to let it overshadow the bright future we were determined to build. Though challenges arose, we faced them head-on, drawing strength from our shared resilience and unwavering bond. With each passing day, Lila blossomed into a remarkable young woman, her laughter and vitality infusing our humble abode with warmth and joy. Together, we forged ahead, embracing the opportunities that lay before us and crafting a life filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities. Nathan's reign of terror had come to an end, his grasp on us shattered forever. From the ashes of our past, we had emerged stronger, united in our resolve to live freely and authentically. As I looked into Lila's eyes, sparkling with determination and resilience, I knew that our journey was far from over. Together, we would navigate whatever challenges the future held, steadfast in our commitment to each other and the boundless potential